All right, so we are kicking off this series on passion, how to have an everlasting passion in your marriage. And, we were thinking about passion, kind of talking about it. And when I thought about passion, I thought about intimacy. And Roy was like, well, passion doesn't necessarily mean sex. And I was like, okay, you're right, it doesn't.
That's right, Farrah. Get your mind out of the gutter.
It's going to be a fun class, guys. So it kind of got me thinking, and so I went and I looked up the definition of passion. And passion is a state or outburst of strong emotion, all-consuming passion for each other, a thing arousing enthusiasm, or it can be an intense sexual love. So passion can be a lot of things. And if you were to look at your spouse and ask them, what am I passionate about, what would they say back to you? What would they say back to you? Some of y'all are passionate about the Texans, the Astros, the Rockets, the Dynamo. Some of y'all are passionate about shopping, baking, barbecue, golf. Some of y'all are I'm getting into everyone's stuff right now. Some of you are passionate about your careers, baseball, work. I looked at Brother Jesse over here. I just throw baseball in there. Some of us are passionate about fitness, our workout regime. Some of us are passionate about spending time with God every day.
Some of us are very passionate about coffee.
Woo!
I said that just for you, Lance.
This is true. I'm right there with them. Don't talk to me before coffee. Coffee first, everything else second. All right.
I usually like to put Christ first.
I live with you. I live with you, bro. That coffee machine is going on first thing in the morning. Then we praying. So what are you passionate about? So in part, passion is a choice. We choose sometimes what we want to be passionate about. And it's often tied to what we spend our time, our energy, and our money on. And so maybe we can redirect some of our time, attention, and resources to our marriage if the passion is not where it needs to be. Because in part, passion really is a choice. You don't have to go to see every Texans game. I know people who will miss church if the Texans are playing when Pastor Joel is preaching, right? And so that is a choice. You don't have to be passionate about the Texans. You don't have to be passionate about working out in the morning. These are choices that we are making. And so as we go through this month on passion, what choices are you making to be passionate about your marriage?
Yeah, and I like what Farrah said there, right? Because, and even as we were preparing for the class last night, I mentioned that, passion, and for those of you that are new here, we usually talk about all things in marriage class, including sex. So if you have little ones in the class, just feel free to have them sit outside if you guys are uncomfortable with them hearing this. But yeah, so passion, I didn't even, he ran. I like that kid. I was like, what's that?
I love that.
Oh, man. I lost my train of thought. So yeah, so Farrah gave you guys a couple of things that we find ourselves very passionate about, right? And none of those things really involve sex. None of those things involve sex. So I started kind of thinking to myself, and one of the things I really love about this class, even though, we're leaders in the class, we're teachers in the class, is that I have such great examples to look to in this class, such as the people that actually teach and facilitate this class as well. And I really do, and I'm not just saying this because I'm here, I really do look at them, try to find commonalities, and also look at them to try to learn something from them. And one of the things that I think I'm very consistent about is that what I see in the marriage leaders in this class is that they are really into their spouse. And so I start thinking to myself, why are they into their spouse? Why are they passionate about their spouses? And I've had conversations with a couple of them, and I've also been able to notice some things just based on observation as well. And I can tell you from my life that I am passionate about my wife for many reasons, which we'll actually get into in this in this lesson.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And when you look at, certain couples in here, leaders, Mary and Melvin, Thad and Jeanette, Marla and Jesse, people who have been married a long time, Clayton and Ashley, I didn't see them. Couples that are passionate about their marriage, you will find that they all have certain qualities and characteristics. One is that they're highly committed. They're highly committed to their marriages. They do life together. They do not live separate lives. Yes, you can be an individual and do your own things. You know, for example, I know Mary loves romance novels. I don't believe Melvin is interested in romance novels. I think he likes cars and fixing on cars out of all the years I've heard them teach. And so you can have different interests, but you can still live a life together. So just keep in mind, we're not saying you have to do everything together, but are you doing life together? Or are you living two separate lives? Are you just roommates passing like ships in the night? They date each other. The couples that we know consistently who are doing great in their marriage, they make time for each other. They date each other. They support one another. When things are going rough, they're facing challenges, they're there to hold each other up. During difficult times and conflict within their marriage, they exercise empathy. They communicate openly and often. And they make time for each other. And so if there's maybe you feel like your marriage is lacking some passion, these are some things that you can look to say, okay, how committed am I to this marriage? Am I making time for my spouse? Are we living together or are we living separate? Do we date each other? And those are some questions you can ask yourself to try to get you back with because we want to listen, it doesn't do us any good to be married 50 years and be miserable. I do not want to just survive in this marriage. I want us to have a good marriage because we spend a lot of time together. 20 years is a long time to wake up to the same person every day. That's a lot of days. And I don't want to wake up and be like, oh, it's you again. You know, like I want to wake up and be like, good morning, babe. You know, like, and I know every day isn't, what do you say, peaches and roses. Some days it's peaches and roaches. I don't know where he came up with that. But
I did say that one time.
But, you know, you should still have that desire when you wake up in the morning. You're like, man, you know what? We may be facing something right now, but I'm glad he's here with me.
That's good, babe. That's good. Yeah, so, again, I like to be very practical in just my approach in life. And so one of the things I want to talk about here, and you guys may have heard me talk about this in the past, which is, keeping my focus on my wife, or keep your focus on your spouse, right? That's very important. This is a boundary necessary to maintain the passion for my wife in my particular case. I've often spoken about being intentional regarding having eyes only for my spouse. This is for many reasons. My upbringing is that my father was a womanizer. He convinced himself, and I think if you allow yourself, you can convince yourself, because the heart is a very tricky thing, right? If you start letting people into your life, if you start letting, for us as guys, multiple women in our hearts, that can create a lot of problems, and that's a scenario that my father found himself in. And so if you've been, walking this Christian walk for a while, you understand that there are generational sins, right? And so because my father struggled with that, I had to be very intentional about having eyes only for my wife. So I'm not just saying this as a cliche or because it sounds cool. I understand that the devil understands this part about my family's history, and therefore he's going to try to attack me in the same way, because he understands that there's a certain susceptibility to that, right? So, yeah. So part of that is being self-aware. And, something that I've always been intentional about, because I saw my mother also struggle in this area with the men that were actually in her life, where, they would be in and out, they would have multiple women. And I made a decision that when I did get married, that I would only have eyes for my wife, right? And so even...
Good decision.
So even as I come across attractive women, and even as she comes across attractive men, such as Thad in the gym, because apparently they attend the same gym. She knows to keep her eyes. Hey, I called you attractive. I gave you a compliment. Right? So she knows to keep her eyes to, this is a principle that we both apply. I had to wake him up. This is a principle that we both apply. We have to be intentional about keeping our eyes to ourselves. It's not to say that you're not going to come across someone that's attractive, right? It's not to say that you won't ever come, but what do you do when you do find someone attractive, right? It's cool to acknowledge it. Yeah, that person looks good. They keep themselves. I mean, I love an athletic woman. That's why one of the reasons why I love my wife, because she works out. Even when I first met her, before she even started working out, she loves sports. So that's something that I'm naturally attracted to, right? But if I see an athletic woman, I'm not going to be like, oh, man, she looks good. Oh, you know? So that's something I'm very, very intentional about. So again, my father, struggled with that. So I have to recognize that and keep my eyes on my wife, primarily for the reasons I mentioned. And also, it's kind of hard to enjoy something when you have your eyes set somewhere else, right? You can have the most wonderful thing, the most wonderful wife, but if your eyes are looking across the fence and thinking that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, you're just not going to be able to enjoy what God has given you, right?
And I think that's just not a men thing. That's a woman thing, too. And sometimes women, it may just not be physical. It may be, you see someone who's very wealthy and they can provide all these things. And you're like, man, that's attractive, And so maybe you're wishing you had that situation over there. Well, like Roy said, you need to be focused on what God has given you and value what he has provided you with, because there's value in that. And Proverbs 4:23 says, watch over your heart with all diligence. From it flows the springs of life. Then Solomon said, guard your mind and your thoughts, because they will determine how you live your life. And it's funny, because one time we went to the Galleria and the kids were younger, and we had gotten there, and it was getting kind of late, so we were going to be leaving, because, usually in the evening, different people come out on Saturday night. And before we could leave, we were coming through, and people looked like they were going to be going out afterwards. And so we had our son with us, and there was, some girls who were just, they didn't have much on. And he almost walked into a wall. He was just like, we were like, Maddox, Mom, did you see that? I'm like, so, it starts early on, and I think Roy probably had a couple conversations with him after that. But, I think we all have to be mindful of where our eyes naturally sometimes want to go to for whatever reason, and just guard your heart. Guard your heart.
Yeah, and so another scripture that I really like that's on the screen as well, 2 Corinthians 10:5, it says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself against the knowledge of God, and this is the part here, and we take captive every thought that make it obedience to Christ. So every thought that comes into your mind isn't necessarily from God. Some of them can be your thoughts, and actually the devil actually speaks to us in our thoughts as well, right? So we have to understand and distinguish between what God is putting in us, what the devil's trying to speak over us, and our own thoughts as well. And if we understand that a thought is not healthy, we have to be able to hold it captive. And so this is something that I apply in my life. I apply this scripture in my life, and I actually say it verbally. I rebuke this, and I hold this captive in the name of Jesus and make it obedient to Christ, right? So again, not to try to over-spiritualize it. I'm just trying to give you tips and tricks that, I've applied over my life that have benefited me to where I have a happy marriage, and I'm appreciative of the wife, and I can actually enjoy the wife that I have, because it's not a given. This doesn't just happen. This doesn't just happen. If you see any happily married couple in this class, it didn't just happen. You have to be intentional.
That's good. Yeah, and meditating on those scriptures and having that mindset allows you to build and foster intimacy prior to the bedroom. Because everything is going to start outside the bedroom first before you get there, right? So what are you doing leading up to that? What are you thinking about up to that? Where are your thoughts at up to those points? And it allows the physical intimacy to be that much more meaningful and fulfilling. And one thing I want to touch on, because I know from a wife's perspective, when we first got married, we didn't have any kids when we came into our marriage, and I know that may not be everyone's circumstance, but we had all the time in the world on the weekends for each other. We pretty much work Monday through Friday, and sometimes I may have to work on the weekend if I had something big on Monday, but for the most part, our weekends were ours, so we would date and do all the things, right? And then 2010, here came little Milan, and boy, wow, was that a big change to our circumstance. And we were in a different season. It was like, hello, new season alert, new season alert. And then it became all about baby Milan. And I was getting up in the middle of the night and nursing and all the things. And at some point where it was like, hey, and I was like, do what? I was like, I'm exhausted, like.
Submit, woman.
And then we had to recalibrate because we were in a new season. And thank God we were attending marriage classes at the time, and we had to start applying some of the things that we had learned that we didn't need then. Because we had learned some things from other people and heard them talk about things that we didn't need during those years, but now we needed them. We started to pull from that. And we said, and Roy was like, we need some date nights. And I was like, okay, I can get behind that. And so then, we at that time, my mother-in-law lived very close to us, next door. Don't get any closer than that. And and so she would keep Milan on Friday nights for us, and every Friday night we had a date night. And that really helped us, one, to talk and communicate with each other, because it would be like, we would sit down to talk and the baby would cry, or it would be time to put her to bed, and by the time I got back to the bedroom, either he would be asleep or I would fall asleep as he's talking to me, because we were just in a season of exhaustion for a while. And so those Friday nights were very valuable to us, where we got time to talk and reconnect. So
let me jump in there real quick. So I understand some of you guys, some of this may be foreign to some people here. I know that there are different types of parenting and whatever, right? And so what I want to encourage you guys, and something that I was actually encouraged when I was in that season of my life, is that your kids are going to be okay. They're going to be okay, right? So make sure that you prioritize your marriage, because one of the things I'm still very conscious about today, even to this day, I have to put my wife above my kids, and I love my kids, right? I know something that we usually say in marriage class, but I understand that for mothers, that actually might be harder, and I can't necessarily understand because I'm not a mother and something didn't actually come out of me, right? But I can tell you based on our experience, and maybe you can speak to this better than I can, right? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, because one of the things that we didn't want to get older in life and lose that passion, lose that connection for one another. And it's very, very important for us to be able to spend time with one another and get to live life together, make more memories together, and so on.
Yeah, well, I think one thing you said to me was our anniversary, came up after we had Milan like 5 or 6 months later, and you were like, well, we're going to take our anniversary trip. And I was like, we taking Milan with us? And he was like, no. And I was like, what? He was like, Farrah, my mom raised me. I turned out fine. She's going to be okay. And I think if you have someone there with you to help you that you trust, you can do that. I know everyone may not have that, but if you have some people in your life that you can trust to leave your kids with, because I know you can't trust your kids with just anybody. I'm talking about my mother-in-law. She raised my husband, and he turned out all right. I would have done a few things different if I was her, but he turned out.
I can't get no rider, baby.
But that moment was a very pivotal moment in our marriage, because we decided, I as a mom had decided, okay, I'm going to trust to leave Milan, even though that was very hard for me to leave her overnight. A date night is one thing. We come and pick her up when we get home and take her back, or she's right next door. But we're going to get on a plane and fly somewhere, and she's going to be all the way here, and I'm going to be there. But man, I slept so good that night. Woo! And by the time it was time for us to go back home, I was like, we're going home already. So believe me, it was worth it. So make your marriage a priority. That's the point. However you have to do it for your circumstance, make your marriage a priority.
Yeah, and this is an encouragement, guys. This is not a condemnation, right? So you shouldn't feel bad about your circumstance. Something to think about and pray about. All right, so physical intimacy is best when a foundation of emotional, mental, and spiritual intimacy exists in the marriage. As a guy, this is something I unfortunately was not taught growing up, because I didn't have a father present. And my mother didn't even talk to me about this, right? So therefore, I used to equate intimacy exclusively with the act of, physically having sex and intercourse, without the regard of building and creating intimacy, right? So intercourse without intimacy is selfish. Still learning that. Intercourse without intimacy is selfish. Guys, have you ever had intercourse with your wife knowing that it was a one-sided encounter, to then look at your wife afterwards and realizing that, she felt used? Right? It's a horrible feeling, It wasn't funny, guys. But I can't mess with you.
Lois is beat red over there
I
now.
know. Maybe it was the other way around. It might be the other way around. I don't know. 80-20 rule, right? But I've been there. And so, again, make sure that you are considerate of your spouse when it comes to that aspect of your marriage, right? Okay. So I never knew I needed intimacy and had no idea how fulfilling it could be. And of course, without intimacy, feels empty and hollow. I can attest to that as well. As a man, the intimacy in physical intimacy makes me feel respected, loved, and secure, right? And this is something that I had to explain to Farrah as well because, she didn't really get that. I mean, when we have unbelievable intimacy, I feel loved. I really do. And I think that it's kind of hard for women to understand that. Thank you. That side, I like that side. Somebody pass the offering plate over there. But yeah, it does make me feel respected, loved, and secure. And this is a conversation that Farrah and I had in the past where, she kept on telling me, well, that's just the physical thing. It's not necessarily what you need. You need this and that and the other. No, I need sex. I need love. I need passion, right? It makes me feel respected, loved, and secure. So, while we have been talking about, passion in other ways, there is a place for physical intimacy as well.
Right, and I think that's, important. And that's why you have to do the date nights. You have to do all the things leading up to that, right? You have to have physical touch without expecting anything in return, guys. You have to be able to sit down and talk to your wife. And every date night does not mean you're getting some. Can we just go on a date sometimes? There has to, there.
No. I put a lot of time into this.
Jeanette said they're not going for that. If they pay for a meal, they expecting some. But I think what I have learned coming to the classes, hearing other men speak and teach on this, and hearing what my husband has said, that this, it's valuable, it's important, and it does make them feel respected and loved and secure. And I think every wife wants their husband to feel that way. And I think from the woman's perspective, yes, we want to feel respected, loved, and we want to have security also in the relationship, but that comes in different ways for us sometimes. And that comes in having that open communication, spending time together or whatever their love language is, filling that tank up. Because then if you fill the tank up, it's going to overflow out, guys. I mean, that's just, you can't outgive God. Well, if you try that with your wife, if you pour into her, she's going to overflow. It's just going to overflow with love. And so ultimately, to have a passionate marriage, to build this physical and emotional intimacy up at the same time. It has to be kind of a two-lane highway. Actually not highway, because does it go in the same direction? What's that called?
A street? Go ahead.
A two-lane, one-way road, okay? Does that make sense? With physical intimacy and emotional intimacy going in the same direction at the same time.
Yeah. So we don't want to overcomplicate this for the guys. Not to say that we're not smart, right? But, some of you guys are respect and love. I thought we were talking about sex today, right? Roy's what, man? Yes, it's true. Farrah does spank me. I mean, she prays for me, right? But this is very, very important to be respected, loved, and secure. Because I know that, some of us I won't go there. All right. So I value these things over just passion and desire alone. As I approached 20 years of marriage, I understand that desire, passion, and are fleeting moments, and therefore intimacy, not just passion alone, is what gives physical intimacy substance. Don't project and this is really important. Don't project your physical intimacy language onto your spouse. Then expect your spouse to reciprocate that need back to you. Right? I think that can be a lesson all on its own.
It could be.
But I'll leave that one there because I know that is a source of frustration in marriage. It's one person might be more adventurous than the other, and I know that has been a frustration in our marriage at times as well. Because I'll leave that one there as well.
Well, I think we can talk about it at a high level. I think what it is that you have to talk to each other and communicate with each other and be open and not take offense to things and be respectful of the other person, right? Like you may not have the same desires and the same needs. Okay, that's okay. But how can we come together to meet both needs? And, and I think that's what it is. You come together and you make I don't want to say an agreement, but you come to an agreement. All right, this is what we're going to do, or this is what we're not going to do, or whatever the thing is. And that may change over time because in marriage, we're constantly changing. Okay? And so your needs are constantly changing, and your body may be physically changing too. I mean, there's a lot of things that are taking place in marriage. And I think as men and women, we need to be mindful of that and just be willing to have the conversations. And it's not an easy conversation sometimes. Sometimes it may be a fun conversation. Sometimes it may not be a fun conversation, but they're necessary.
Yeah, I would say necessary. One last point about that is, again, from my perspective, I have to be honest with myself. Sometimes I have to have conversations with myself, right? If I'm frustrated with our sex life, I have to examine myself, either talk to her, talk to God, or talk to someone. What is the origin of why I want to do these things, right? What is driving this? Because, and I've been in this situation, spent 10 years struggling and frustrated with certain things because I wasn't being honest with myself, right? You're not going to get everything you want sexually, guys and girls, 80-20 rule, right? So there will be certain moments where you do feel, frustrated. We encourage you guys to talk to one another. We encourage you to talk to someone about it. We have resources here at church, so don't spend 10 years in frustration. Don't spend 20 years in frustration. There are people to help you.
That's good. That's good. All right. Last but not least, the last thing we want to talk about is one of the biggest killers of intimacy in marriage in every season is time. And purposefully pursuing passion in every season requires time to cultivate. Americans are we're busy in America. I mean, we are like the most busiest country you ever want to see. We work more than other countries. We get less days off, on and on and on. We are just so busy. And then not just with work, all the kids' activities. Kids have to be in this and that and just on and on and on. And then some of us are very active in church and volunteer. And so we are very busy. All right, so there's a book called No Time for Sex by two psychologists. And one thing that they said in the book is if you don't talk, think, or read about sex, you'll soon forget about it. And so if you aren't talking to your spouse about sex, if you're not thinking about like, okay, when are we going to have sex next? You're probably not going to have it. You have to be intentional about it. And I know after we had kids, we had to plan it. And it sounded, to me, even just the thought of saying it now is just like, we're planning to have sex on these days. It just seemed like so unadventurous. It seemed so boring. But if we didn't take the time to do that, then it might not otherwise happen because we had to be intentional. We were especially after we had the second child, we were like, all right, we're going to have to get these days on the books, and these are the days we're going to make time for each other. Because if we didn't do it, we just saw a week would go by, and Roy's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, like, there's a lot to do around here. And so
I was walking around the house like a zombie.
So you need to talk about it. You need to think about it. And if necessary, plan for it. All right. Now, and there's another book by Cliff and Joyce Penner called The Gift of Sex. They interviewed several thousand couples. And 75% of those couples said the greatest frustration in their sex life was the lack of time. So it's like, not just, you're not the only people experiencing this. Like this is a epidemic in marriage. Like there's just not enough time for sex. And so you have to be intentional to plan it. When you were newlyweds, you probably didn't have to do that. You didn't have to think about it. You were just all over each other. Well, life happens, kids happen, dogs, on and on and on. You get very busy. And here's some of the things that we're busy with. The average couple doubles their level of responsibility every 10 years. Every 10 years, we double our responsibility. So by the time you're a midlife couple, are we midlife? Because I'm young. You're running everything. The kids to numerous activities, church, you're running your own business or someone else's. You're running to meet friends, get the dogs groomed. You're running to care for your aging parents, help out neighbors, or other friends. And it just seems like we're constantly running. And when you talk to people, what do they say? How you doing? Oh, I'm so busy. That's like everyone. I'm so busy. Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm doing that. But you have to make time to be intentional about pursuing passion in your marriage, because if you don't, it will get away from you. And if you're sitting here today and you're like, man, we haven't had time with each other in a week or two or a month, and we talk to couples and sometimes it's been like months, and I'm like, see how good you got it.
Hit me that hard. Good Lord.
But if you're in the months, like, come on, guys, like today is the day when you get home. Listen, turn your phones off and spend some time together and do what y'all need to do. Like, we're just telling you this. Like, I know this is going on YouTube. Hopefully y'all can beep that part out. But, like, do not let months go by. Like, that is just, that's a dangerous zone. And it is dangerous. And tell why it's dangerous, babe. Why is that dangerous for men to go, like, months?
Masturbation.
Oh, well.
I just wanted to wake everyone up. But no, that's a very important topic. Again, being real, I want to deposit something into you guys, right? Every time we teach any one of these teachers, we want you guys to walk away with something meaningful. And so from a guy's perspective, masturbation is an issue, right? And so what happens is a guy does that. It's a temporary fix. If you do it enough, you can go months and months and months because something may be happening with the spouse. She may have a physical condition or she may not want to have sex. So there's an imbalance. Masturbation is something that happens more often than not. Statistics says that 80% of men masturbate. I think it's higher than that, to be honest with you, right? And so what I want to encourage the men here is try not to do that. I know that, I've heard even Christian, scholars and teachers say there might be a place for that in marriage. I'm not here to debate that, but it's something that I try to stay away from because it is not beneficial for me. When I found myself doing that, and I'm not ashamed to say it because I want people to be free, right? I could be focused on myself and say, I want to come over here and look holier than thou, but if 80 to 90% of men struggle with this, I want people to be free, right? And so my encouragement to all the men here, let's use the 80-20 rule, 80% men, 20% women. If that is something that you struggle with, make sure you talk to your spouse about that. I know I spoke with my spouse about that, right? And so don't have this imbalance in life and in your marriage where you go too long without, physical intimacy because it is very, very important.